Have you ever seen two people in a relationship that you know is dead, but somehow they didn't get the memo? You probably know on a gut level what I'm talking about. You see two people who do nothing but argue, complain about each other, completely ignore each other. See, I believe that a relationship is a living thing with its own life force, and it can die. And the two partners may still be officially a couple, and they may still be attached to each other, but the love and care and energy has totally evaporated. But the thing just keeps going, staggering around from day to day, draining those who come in contact with it. This is what I call the nightmare scenario, a zombie relationship. So, how do you know if you're in a zombie relationship, and how do you prevent it? And why does this happen? Welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm your host, Ari Graff, and I'm joined by my co hosts, Faisal Kokar and Chuck Chapman. And we are nice guy recovery experts. Okay, so how do you know if you're in a zombie relationship? I'm going to give you my definition, but first, this conversation requires you to accept the idea that a relationship can die, even when two people are generally kind and well intentioned. Many people operate under the belief that with the right attitude and enough work, a relationship with problems can be fixed. I believe that some relationships with problems can be improved and even run better than before, but other relationships have lost their life force and cannot be resuscitated. So if you continue to stay, that means you're in a zombie relationship. So here are some of the symptoms of a zombie relationship. So if these are occurring for, I'm going to say 1 year, then you can be pretty sure that you're in a zombie relationship. You argue most or all of the time. That's one. Number two, you have frequent talks about the relationship and what's wrong with it. Number three, you rarely talk about anything important. You don't discuss stuff anymore. Number four, you are not honest with each other, and you believe that being honest would harm the relationship. Number five, you can't imagine a shared future together. Number six, one or both partners believes the other needs to be fixed. Number seven, you are no longer attracted to your partner. Number eight, you no longer have sex. Number nine, your relationship is only about managing obligations such as a shared house, a business, kids, or other family members. Number 10, you are not aligned in your goals. Say one of you wants a kid, the other one doesn't want kids. Number 11, you are not happy being in the relationship. Sounds obvious. How long do these symptoms need to be present? Like I said, I would say a good working rule is a year. All right. So, Chuck, have you ever been in a zombie relationship?
Yes and no. I, I think my first marriage probably should have ended way before it did. Um, but some of the symptoms you talked about, I think, were present and not present. Um, but I know a lot of guys that I work with are in these kind of relationships where they tolerate the intolerable. They uh, they're afraid of losing the relationship. And so even though the relationship might not be serving them very well, they continue to be in it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty common thing, especially amongst nice guys, that the zombie relationship is, this, it's like basically kind of like trying to revive a dead horse. And it doesn't matter how much CPR you give it, the thing's dead and it's time to move on.
All right. So, Faisal, have you ever been in a zombie relationship?
I think I've dated a few zombies. Right. So
Oh,
does that
it was
count?
their fault.
Yeah.
Dead inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they looked a bit zombie. So okay, yeah, I think a relationship did turn into a zombie relationship, some of them. And I remember well, actually, my first one was a very zombie relationship. It was really toxic. It wasn't healthy relationship, and I liked some of the the descriptions you had. One of them was constantly talking about the problems in the relationship. That was the subject matter all the time. There was something wrong with it, and there was no moment of peace. And she wanted to break everything down, everything. She just wanted to know every single thing. Had millions of questions. There was like no end to the questions. I just kept on asking, "What about this? What about this? What are your thoughts on that?" And it just exhausted me. And that's probably when I realized that's what men say when they want peace, is they want that um, moment of not being focused on just talking about the relationship all the time. So yeah, I can definitely relate to some of the stuff on the list. And I work with a lot of guys who are divorced and then they come back and they want to get back into the dating game. And the one thing they don't want is the same type of partners they've had in the past. The partners where there's a dead bedroom, there's always a problem, no accountability, right? There's no future, but the relationship's expired, but they still keep consuming the the food. That's how I see it. They expired, but they still keep eating it.
So they want to recreate a, a kind of dead relationship in their new relationships.
Well, they tend to recreate those relationships, but they don't choose to. But and what they're trying to do is make sure that when I get back in the dating market, I don't repeat all the same mistakes I did.
Right. So I think that's what I meant to say. That this can be a pattern for someone, is that they
Yeah,
create zombie relationships. So I,
yeah.
I
How about
think
yourself?
how about
I
me?
want
I mean, I would
yeah.
say my marriage became a zombie relationship, and I didn't get the memo that it was over, or I ignored the memos. It wasn't until I found out that my ex had an affair that even that I don't think I had the memo. You know,
Is that when they say that the writing's on the wall, but we don't see it, or we see it too late, but all the signs were there.
that's right. So I think this is one of the issues for nice guys, and maybe other people who don't identify as a nice guy, is that we're not taught what the signs are for a healthy relationship necessarily, or for when a relationship is dead. And I think it's even helpful to have this concept that a relationship can die in your head, to know that it, um, if it reaches that point, then it needs to be put out to pasture. That it cannot be revived, and that's just wasted time and energy. Um, so I think that's one of the things that gets in the way for nice guys, and why I wanted um, to use this terminology about death and zombie. Because there's so much talk about, well, if we could just work on this or work on that, or if my partner just changed on this or that, then everything would be okay. But I think there's just a point where the relationship dies and it cannot be revived. Um,
Absolutely. You know what? I think somehow sometimes we do know earlier on. Like for example, when I'm in my first relationship, the hints were there. I didn't really want to be in that relationship, but somehow I just kept going on the relationship. I didn't have the strength to leave the relationship. So because I didn't have the strength to leave the relationship, I was acting more from the cowardice place. I didn't have my balls. And so what I decided to do was, that relationship was giving me a lot of problems. I thought, okay, if I double down on everything I can do to fix the relationship, fix the person, it'll improve. I even went as far as proposing to her, thinking that it's going to be better. But no, it was temporarily better. And then it went back to the old patterns of, there's a problem. you know, constant faults, constant problem, constant blaming, and, you know, constantly unhappy. And I was walking on eggshells all the time. It was horrible.
Yeah, it's like there's a sunken cost issue. It's like you've put so much energy or so many years into a relationship that you want to stick with it. You want to make it work, or you could feel like a failure. I think I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that gets in the way, fear of feeling like a failure. And I know that
Yeah.
was one of the things that I wrestled with in my marriage. A few other thoughts that I had about why people get stuck in a zombie relationship. They're afraid of the stigma around divorce. It's another one that I had.
Yeah. Me
Um,
too.
Afraid of the pain of breaking up. So there's an aversion to pain. Um, there's a fear of being alone, a fear of the unknown, fear of the future. So I think there's a number of fears that get in the way that are often unconscious.
Yeah. You got fear of culture. And I tell you, a big fear I really had was, and I felt so guilty, was I don't want to hurt her. That was a big fear. Was, you know, if I break up, it'll be, you know, I'm you know, causing the breakup, and she'll be, you know, devastated, and I didn't want to be the cause of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've got a client, and that's one of his big fears is that I'm going to hurt her, even though we've talked about, um, you're hurting the other person by staying in a relationship that you're not happy in and that you're not actually committed to, and where you're not aligned. And the more compassionate thing, the kinder thing would be to actually end it so that your partner can also find something that would be better for them.
Yep. I think that my clients are oftentimes come in and they're fighting for something because they've sort of come to realization that it's dying or it's dead, and so they're trying to revive it. And I like what you said, Ari, about the relationships being a living organism, and I think they are. And I think a lot of us, we don't really know how to take care of a relationship in the first place. Nobody really taught us. Maybe we had bad role models, or we haven't done a lot of work, on ourselves. And it's kind of a relationship's a little bit like a plant or a flower or something. If you don't know how to take care of it, it'll probably die because you overwater it, or you put it in the shade, or you're not putting it, in a place, in an environment where it can actually thrive. And that's just because you don't know how to do it, you know. And there, I
That's
think
me,
there's
by
a,
the way. I'm the
that's you,
worst plant
you're
parent.
the, yeah. But
Oh
I think you
no.
can, I think where you have to kind of come into a recognition is this relationship dead, or is it just dying? And if we learned how to treat the relationship, oftentimes they'll tell guys, they'll come in and they'll talk about their relationship. I'm like, your relationship has like stage 3 cancer. It's dying, it's on its way. If you do absolutely nothing, your relationship's going to die. And you can also, we can do the treatment, we can do the chemotherapy, and we can change your diet, and we can change all these things, and the relationship still might die. It might be that far gone, but it's definitely going to die if we don't do anything. So I think that there's a combination of coming to a recognition of like, this relationship is dead, but also, like, when do you call it? When does the doctor sort of like call the death? Everybody's doing CPR, and at some point the doctor's like, okay, calling it. And that's the point in which you have to know, let's stop doing the CPR, let's call this. But up until that point, you try to revive it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the issues. It's like even if you agree with this idea of that a relationship can die, it's like when do you call it? Um, or when because this is what happens with nice guys. They know that a relationship is ailing, they, but they don't know when it's actually dead. So that's part of why I wanted to do this episode, and why I was giving that list of symptoms, um, is to give people an idea of when to call it. But one of the hard things for nice guys is they don't trust their gut on something like this, and they've got all these fears about what ending the relationship will mean that they're often not conscious of. So it takes some balls um, to call a relationship, I would say, and we're not given a template for when to end a relationship.
So when would you guys call it off then?
Do you agree with this idea of like a year of one of these symptoms or several of these symptoms would be a good measure?
Well,
I,
I would say a year probably is a good measure. I also think that you have to discern between what's tolerable and what's not tolerable. Like, David Data talks about Way of the Superior Man. There's going to be things that she does that just irritate you, but they're tolerable. And then there's things that, simply aren't tolerable. And I think one of the things nice guys don't do is they don't actually ask themselves what is intolerable behavior. Yeah. So things like affairs or emotional abuse or shaming or these kind of things, I think those are the things that you set boundaries on. And if those boundaries continue to get crossed, then it's time to leave. But if your partner is willing to work with you and you set a boundary, and then I think that there's room to grow in that. But I think essentially, like, if your partner continuously breaks your boundaries over and over again, then and the behavior is truly intolerable, it's time to call it.
I think a year. Well, if you look at the modern dating landscape, I mean, a year is probably like two relationships within that one. So most, a lot of relationships are not even going that far. I think you would probably have to have a look at the trajectory of the relationship, where it's going, and how you guys are able to resolve this. What I found was relationships where I just constantly spoke about the relationship and see things as a positive negative. I knew the trajectory was going towards a breakup. To me, a relationship is like a cocktail mix. You put two cocktails together, and some of them just bring out the worst in you, some bring out the best in you. And later on, sometimes those cocktails can change as well. The chemistry can change, the chemicals can change, and that happens as well. For me, when I've checked out of the relationship, is I'm no longer pursuing her, I'm no longer wanting to spend time with her, I'm no longer putting the same effort in. And I want to spend more time with another girl or something. And the same thing with her. If she's no longer emotionally caring, warm, she's more distracted on her phone, distracted with everything else other than the relationship, I know she's checking out. If she's looking for validation for anywhere else, connections, rather spend time with other guys and meeting other guys, I know that relationship has checked out. But what you want to do is, as nice guys, we're not that self-aware in relationships. That's the biggest thing, is we're not picking up the micro clues. So when you start picking up the micro clues, that's when you can then start to work on the relationship, or then, maybe, but then decide whether this is going to work or not. So it's the micro clues that you could be really clued up on about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we want to teach men to be attending to the micro clues. I'm talking about macro clues. If you're no longer having sex, I mean, that's just a huge symptom. Um, you're not happy all the time. That's a huge symptom.
Yeah.
Um,
Even before that, before the dead bedroom occurs, It's more like she's rejecting you more often in the relationship. She's more cold in the relationship. She's more distant in the relationship. That's a great time to start looking at actually what's going on. What's going on with you? What's going on with her? Are you guys checking out? And then you'll find that the gap between intimacy just starts growing and growing and growing. And then if the trajectory is like bigger and bigger and bigger, you know that, okay, we need to do something about it. So picking up a
Right.
lot
When
quicker.
it's a stage 2, then
Yeah.
you have some room.
Yeah. Because we guys, most men, this is what I notice, right? Most men, deal with situations at breaking point, right? So for example, look at our health. I've got a pain here, I've got this here. When it gets to unbearable, I'm going to do something about it, right? I'm not going to go to the doctor until it's unbearable. Right? That's what most guys do. It's a last minute for my project or something. I'm going to go on the last minute and then deal with it. So it's that breaking point that do we really start to do something about it? I think before then, we're just avoidant. Yeah. Not all men, but I'm just saying.
Right. So it requires a consciousness and an attention to relationship health. Just like you need to have that consciousness in your work life and your physical health and fitness, every aspect of your life, or you could get into trouble. So, if you're listening to this and you're in a zombie relationship, let us know. Maybe we could help you with it or help you to move on. And we'd like to hear your story. So thanks again for being part of the Nice Guy Show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. This helps us reach out to more men who need support. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, make sure to subscribe there as well. If you like this podcast, check out episode number 36, Why a Relationship Won't Make You Happy. And we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Nice Guy Show with certified Nice Guy recovery coaches Ari Graff, Chuck Chapman, and Faisal Kokar. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can listen to our latest episodes and visit us on www.theniceguyShow.com. If you have any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, send us an email at support@theniceguyShow.com. Thanks for listening.